A minister-president. A minister-president is the head of government in any of a number of European countries or subnational governments, in which a parliamentary or semi-presidential system of government prevails, who presides over the Council of Ministers. It is an alternative term for Prime Minister, Premier, Chief Minister or First Minister, and very similar to the title of President of the Council. The German word Ministerpräsident means President of the Ministers. The designation Ministerpräsident is less frequently used in English, are often politicians holding titles that literally correspond to Minister-President are referred to in English as premiers or prime ministers. Austria. From 1867 to 1918, the first minister of the government was known as Ministerpräsident, before that Staatskanzler. Today the head of the Austrian federal government is called the Bundeskanzler, while the head of a state government is called the Landeshauptmann, not Ministerpräsident. See List of ministers. President of Austria. Belgium. The term minister-president is also used in Belgium to describe the head of government of a Belgian region or linguistic community, but not the head of the Belgian federal government, who is referred to as the Prime Minister. According to the Belgian constitution, the federal Prime Minister is appointed by the King, and approved by the federal parliament with a vote of confidence. The federal ministers later swear an oath of allegiance to the King. The ministers president of the regions and linguistic communities are not appointed by the King, but are directly appointed by the respective parliament. Ministers of the regions and linguistic communities are not required to swear allegiance to the King but simply take an oath in the respective parliament. See Minister-President of the Brussels Capital Region. Minister-President of Flanders. Minister-President of the French Community, Minister-President of the Walloon region, Minister-President of the German-speaking community. Germany. The Ministerpräsident is the head of state and government of a German state. The office roughly corresponds to the governor of a U.S. state and more closely to the premier of an Australian state or Canadian province. The feminine form Ministerpräsident may be used to refer to female office holders. The title is commonly translated as Prime Minister or Premier, whereas Ministerpräsident or less often Ministerpräsident is used in official business in order not to confuse the incumbent with the head of government of a nation-state. The constitutional position of a minister-president is comparable to the one of chancellor at the federal level. Ministers-president of the German states are elected by the respective state parliaments and appoint ministers in the respective states, and determine policy guidelines. Along with several of the ministers, they commonly represent the state in the Bundesrat or abroad. By virtue of the position in the Bundesrat, they can exert considerable influence on national politics within the federal structure. The office of the minister-president is called Staatskanzlei in all non-city states except Baden-Württemberg, where it is called Staatsministerium. In the case of the three German city-states, Berlin, Bremen, and Hamburg, the head of the state government is not called a Ministerpräsident but goes by a different title, viz. Regierender Bürgermeister, Bürgermeister und Präsident des Senats, and Erster Bürgermeister of Hamburg. Their office is called Senatskanzlei. Despite this difference in terminology, however, the heads of government of these city-states hold the same power and position as the ministers-president of the other German states. List of current ministers-president. Post List of ministers-president of Baden-Württemberg. List of ministers-president of Bavaria. List of ministers-president of Brandenburg. List of ministers-president of Hesse. Prime Minister of Lower Saxony. List of ministers-president of Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. List of ministers-president of North Rhine-Westphalia. List of ministers-president of Rhineland-Palatinate. List of ministers-president of the Saarland. List of ministers-president of Saxony. List of ministers-president of Saxony-Anhalt. List of ministers-president of Schleswig-Holstein. List of ministers. President of Thuringia. Abolished posts. Minister-President of Prussia. Hungary. The title of Hungary's head of government in Hungarian is miniszterelnök, which literally translated means minister-president. However, because prime minister or premier is the more usual title in a parliamentary system for a head of government in English-speaking nations, the head of the Hungarian government is usually referred to in English as the Prime Minister of Hungary. The Netherlands. In the Netherlands, the Prime Minister is officially referred to as Minister-President, although the term Premier is more commonly used. His responsibilities are defined in the Constitution of 1848. The title of Minister-President has been in official use since 1945. Norway. In Norway, Vidkun Quisling, head of the collaborationist government from 1942 to 1945 during the German occupation in World War II, held the title of Minister-President. Spain. In Spain, the head of government is known as Presidente del Gobierno, or President of the Government, but in English, he is more commonly referred to as the Prime Minister.